While I was sitting there watching this film, I think for the third time, and grumbling because I didn't have the people here that I wanted to have here, I then realized like this is a perfect group because you are all birth workers. And so, and we have an expectant mama, and we have a room full of birth workers, and so how perfect, actually. So I felt much better. I went over and ate a bunch of lumpia because I saw you. You know what I mean? So it's Christmas time. 5 days from now will be one of the major holidays in my faith tradition calendar. And that holiday is all about mamas and babies. Babies coming under unusual circumstances and needing protection from governmental forces and needing to be given shelter by the community. Okay? And how appropriate that we're here with the little baby outside of his mommy, the little baby inside of his mommy, and a bunch of beautiful people who want to keep kids healthy. So I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Samsara Morgan. I am a birth and postpartum doula, childbirth educator, doula trainer, and a few other wonderful things, and I've been doing that for 37 years in this beautiful city. And I'm going to be the moderator for our little conversation. I've invited Christina Brennan to be with us because she has a lot of wonderful technical information that she can help us with and maybe answer some questions. And I invited Chelsea to be here because Chelsea's a mama. Yeah, mama. Yep. We had two other mamas who are going to be with us, and one's sick and one's mom is sick. So one of the blessings to them.
Mama's sick.
Your mom. Here. And so I think how I would like to start our time is we have about a half an hour. I want to end about 9:30. It's a little after 9 right now. I would love to have Christina share whatever she would like to, whatever's on her heart to share. And then Chelsea can speak. This is the first time you're speaking on this subject, so congratulations.
I know, it's always this man over here that's speaking on it.
And after they say what they need to say, I would love questions and how you felt about the film, and then any direct questions you have, a wonderful person here to answer them for you. So we'll take advantage of that. Can you start?
Sure, I'll introduce myself. My name is Christina Brennan. I am the founder and president of A Voice for Choice, and also A Voice for Choice Advocacy. And our mission is to educate and advocate on informed choice for anything that goes into your body, so be it food, air, water, pharmaceuticals, vaccines. And I got into the vaccine research, so my real job is market research, and I'm also a type A personality, so when you give me information that looks questionable, I go down a rabbit hole and usually never come back out. And I did that 12 years ago when I was pregnant with my eldest daughter, and I had an amazing childbirth educator that I learned from, and you know, the big thing there was get together your birth plan. And so I went online at that point. Online didn't have as much as it does now. Printed out a birth plan and went through it diligently and came across the hepatitis B vaccine. And I was just like, hepatitis B, like you get that from sex or needles as far as I know, and I didn't know much at that point. And so then I started doing research, and it was just like, why does my baby at 12 hours old need the hepatitis B vaccine, which is what's recommended? And I was just like, this just doesn't seem right. Like, I've been so careful to eat really, really good food, and I've done research on my car seats and my cribs and my this and my that, and I've done all this research, and like, why would I do this? And that was the beginning of my journey. And since then I've spent probably the first 2 years after that really researching it. And I definitely was, my first reaction was, we're just going to put it off. We don't need to do it at 12 hours old. We'll do it, in a month. I'm going to do more research, and I'm going to do more research, and I'm going to do more research. And have done probably, somebody asked me last year before, and it was just like, how much research have you done? And I worked it out, and I think I've done more than 10,000 hours of research on vaccines, just because I just consume. And I probably, when my older daughter was 5, my younger one was 2. I kind of was just like, okay, I've done my research for my kids, and you know, I shared information with the people and with people that already had the door open. So like in hypnobirthing communities and in other communities where it was kind of an alternative, I would share information. But I felt that very strongly that it was, you know, a decision I made between me, my doctor, and my, you know, my kids kind of thing, and my ex. And then 2015. February 2015, SB 277, which was the law that mandates vaccines took away the personal belief exemption for childhood vaccines going into school, was put forward, and I realized then that I could no longer be as silent. I wasn't silent about it, but I needed to be more vocal about it, and really, you know, share information and get the information out there, because there's just too much. Doctors are they're not necessarily brainwashed, they just don't give the information that's needed to be given to parents. And actually the first panel I was on 2 years ago in, I think it was February maybe, that I met Samsara, and we discussed vaccines and SB 277 and where it was going, and it's I commend you for the work you're doing, and it's part of why we sort of, I guess, partnered with you because Samsara really, you know, wants parents to know their options and talk about vaccines. And our organization really believes that time of pregnancy through the first year is when parents really want to do that research. Once a parent's gotten to 2 years, their child is 2 years old, they've either had the vaccinations and been vaccine injured, in which case they're doing their research, hopefully, although many doctors say, you know, there's no correlation, it wasn't a vaccine, or they've gotten to 2 years, their child's gotten to 2 years old, gotten most of the vaccinations, and they're, you know, supposedly okay. And so you know, you'll see we have a bumper sticker that says, spend as much time researching vaccines as you do a car seat, because parents these days spend more time researching the car seat, which is guaranteed. You know, if you have an accident and the car seat fails, you can sue the car seat manufacturer. They don't spend as much time researching vaccines, which have no liability. You can't sue the vaccine manufacturers if you have a reaction to the vaccine. And so that's you know, to me, it's not necessarily about whether you're for or against vaccines. It's do your research on vaccines and make sure you are comfortable with that decision. Thank you. And if you have anybody who has any, I'll let Chelsea introduce herself, but if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Chelsea is first here, and a mother. I did have a doula during my birth, and that was the best decision I made. It's such a journey, you know, you're, especially, well, it's my first and only thus far, but it's such a journey, you know, you're pregnant, and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so different, and there's all these things to think about, you know, what you're eating, and can I take Benadryl because I had an allergic reaction, or like, you know, like, can I eat a hot dog? I'm not supposed to eat hot dogs, but you know, so you're just thinking about all these different things, and then, you know, it's getting closer to delivery time, and you start to think about, like, what does my delivery look like? Do I want a natural birth? Do I want, you know, any painkillers? And then the vaccines did come up for us, but not as much. But my mom has multiple sclerosis, and she was diagnosed just after I was born. I was the first child, and so we see that a lot with MS patients, you know, getting diagnosed right after having a child. And she always thought it was, she got a vaccine while after having me in the hospital. Basically, she was exposed to someone, a child, it was actually my cousin, who had come down with chickenpox, and they asked her, like, he had come to visit her in the hospital, and they asked her, did you ever have chickenpox? And she couldn't remember, and my grandma, her mom, couldn't remember, so they were like, let's just give you, you know, the vaccine right now, just in case. And sure enough, you know, not too long after that, she started developing symptoms and was diagnosed with MS. Yeah, so, but for her, even, she was told, it's not the vaccine, you're crazy for thinking that. So she kind of went on, this is, you know, 86 or so, 87 when she got diagnosed. But yeah, so she was told she was crazy and kind of just moved on, and I got my vaccines. Luckily, the schedule was a lot less then than it is now. But I have, asthma, and we have eczema in our family, so there's a little bit of that. And I think now, knowing what I know now, it definitely played a huge part in some of the symptoms that I have, like with asthma. But so that was the first layer for us, and just kind of questioning. And us as well, we saw the Hep B at 12 hours old, and we thought, that's crazy, like that just seems ridiculous. I was into having a natural birth and eating really healthy, so to me that just didn't jive with any of our other outlooks, and then we just started kind of slowly just pushing stuff off as much as we could and just asking questions. Jacob did have his just DTaP at 2 and 4 months, and the rotavirus. And we did see some reaction after, just a little bit. He was a little bit delayed in speech, I feel. You could ask my husband, and he feels kind of differently, but we just saw a little bit of difference in behavior. We did a lot of detoxing, we still do, and he was healthy and happy, but we stopped vaccinating at that point. And one of the big turning points for us to really just say, like, okay, no more until we at least get more information. That was kind of our next step. Was when we were at his pediatrician, and she said, she was kind of fed up with us. She's like, you need to sit down and write out when you're going to give these vaccines to Jacob and sign this piece of paper, like a contract, or you need to leave the practice. And this was in 2013, so it's kind of before this whole topic was out there as much as it is now, I think, and as controversial it is before, this movie. So that's when our eyes really were opened, and we were kind of like, whoa, something big is going on here, something corrupt is going on here, and like we're gonna stop until we just have more information, and we feel that it's safe for our child, to go forward with this. But it took us a year before we found a pediatrician that we were comfortable with, and we were just interviewing pediatricians, and some of them said, I believe what you believe, but I can't do that here in my practice. I have to give vaccines. I'm sorry. So no, I can't see you. And then some were like, absolutely not. I don't believe, that I believe that vaccines are needed, so you need to adhere to that. So it took us a year before we found a pediatrician. I'm happy to give recommendations. We have an amazing pediatrician that is unfortunately all the way in Marin, so for us in East Bay it's very difficult to get there. But she's worth it, and the practice is amazing. But they are having to face this SB 277 bill, just like all the other doctors out there, and when that passed, they had a big panel of all their doctors addressing parental concerns, because a lot of the parents at the practice were either delaying majorly or not doing vaccines at all, so there were a lot of questions. And a lot of these children were already in school, so it's kind of like my child has, friends in school and teachers, and now we have to think about what that looks like for us. And they're still kind of digesting it and figuring out and navigating it, and as most of us are, because the bill is very vague, actually, you'll find. So
it's deliberate.
And it's deliberate, yeah, because they can put a lot of new things in. They can say, actually, you need to get some other crazy new vaccine that that's gonna come down the pike, which there's many. But for us, with Jacob, he was not in school yet, but it was a major life change for our family, because luckily my husband at the time had gone back to school and does work at home now, but he has had to stay home with Jacob. We're not able to do daycare, or even and I don't know what that's going to mean when he's a little bit older and wants to play soccer. Is it going to extend to going to camp? Yeah. So it's definitely a huge game changer for us, and we've thought we're going to move to another state, so it just has disrupted our life a lot. But there is a silver lining that is meeting all of you and bringing people like this together.
Congratulations, your first talk. I'm going to move into questions. I just feel very strongly that I want to speak as an African American mother and speak to the and grandmother, and to speak to how this film clearly points out another vicious attack on brown boys. And it's deplorable, and so like, will this ever freaking end? Will this ever freaking end? As a doula, I hear more than I care to the tears of my clients when they get their sonograms and find out that they're having sons. That that's not a happy moment for mamas anymore. They're sad and scared. And a beautiful young brown and black couple saying to me, well, I'm just not going to have a baby. I'm just not going to bring a baby into this world. And it rips the heart out of me. It rips the heart out of me. And I am very grateful that I was a feisty little 19-year-old when I was having my twins. And when they were talking to me about immunizations and a bunch of other things, I basically was like, it didn't make sense to me. And I didn't even know why it didn't make sense to me. I had not done research in it. I just thought it didn't make any sense to stick pins into a little baby. Basically, that was my opinion. For something that I had chickenpox when I was a kid. I had the mumps. Actually, the devastating part of that was that I caught the mumps. Actually, it was during Christmas week. I was supposed to be the Virgin Mary in the Christmas play, and I couldn't. And like my arch nemesis in second grade, got to be the Virgin Mary, and I was devastated. That's my injury around my childhood illness. I remember lying there in my little bed, hearing the Christmas carols and crying my little 7-year-old tears. Very pathetic and adorable. But that was the extent of it. So considering that, I had gone through these, had all the childhood boogers. I'd survived them except for that devastation. And I have these beautiful little babies, and God gave me twin babies, for crying out loud. And they wanted to stick pins in them. And it made no sense. That should be enough. You know, but now a young mother has to go to be armed with studies and all of this information to fight with the doctors when she just exerts her right to say, no, this is my child, and I do not wish this to be done to my child. That moms don't have that right, and that brown and black moms really don't have that right, because if we push on that now here in California, our moms get CPS called up. CPS gets called when moms don't want the hepatitis B shot. CPS gets called when moms don't want the vitamin K shot after their newborns are born, because it makes you suspect. It makes you not a safe person. There's something wrong with you.
What if I just act like I've accidentally forgot? Oh, I didn't know if that was. Oh my God, keep with the shot. I did not know. It's already passed.
The key is you have to be polite but firm. So
Yes.
you need to know your rights, and you need to know that you don't have to have the hepatitis B shot before you leave the hospital. You don't have to have the vitamin K shot before you leave the hospital, but you need to be able to say, I've done my research. I don't want that. Thank you very much. And you can always say, oh, we're doing the hepatitis B shot in the first pediatrician's visit. Get yourself out of the hospital, and then you.
That's what we said. We had to sign a piece of paper that basically said, you've decided this.
So you can do it. You just you need to be firm, polite but firm, and just make it
Keep
very
your
clear.
baby by your side.
That's the
entire
other
time.
thing.
Yeah.
Do not let your baby go out of your sight or whoever you're with, because the minute they take the baby off to get, the blood drawn or the this or the that, it's not even that I think they're, you know, colluding behind your back, oh, we're gonna sneak the baby out and give them
It's
the
just
shot.
what they
It's
do.
just part of procedure. It's
Right.
just part of, okay, the baby's going, they're going to get, you know, they're doing X, Y, and Z to the baby, okay, it's, you know, that's what happens kind of thing. And so,
They're on such autopilot,
Yeah.
and they have their checkoff sheets that they have to check off on. And in some places, like I know in Kaiser, they get in trouble. They get, you know, penalized by not following the procedure. That's why you have to sign the waiver to prove that they did offer it to you and
yeah,
you
you
declined.
chose to.
Okay.
And it's a Chelsea's point of the doctors and it being hard to find a doctor. So most doctors who take insurance are threatened with the fact that if their insurance, if they don't have a somewhere between 90 and 95% vaccination rate for the children, this is specifically pediatricians, in their pediatric office, then the insurance company will pull that insurance coverage. So they're not, they basically, it's, you know, to her point of, you know, there are doctors that believe our way that say we have to immunize it, we have to vaccinate in our practice. Those are those doctors that basically are they're being told, you know, we won't give you the, you know, Anthem, whatever it is, coverage. So none of those patients you have right now will come to you because you're no longer in their network and they'd have to pay out of network fees.
And Marin is like one of the richest counties in the state, right?
Yeah, and this pediatric practice is, you know, only PPO, so it's expensive. Like, I'm lucky my work, you know, offers that for our family, but it's also a lot more money per month for me. And then they also, on top of that, have like a joining fee, which they.
And there are other, so we've been working since SB 277 passed, we've been working with parents who want to get what we say is a second opinion in order to get a medical exemption. And we have a list of doctors, but none of them take insurance, for example, because once they take insurance, they come under that scrutiny and under that, you know, guidelines. The other thing to look at is to look for family doctors rather than pediatricians. So family doctors don't necessarily fall under that jurisdiction. It's mostly pediatricians that the insurance companies look at. So if you have a family doctor who sees, you know, who's not specialized necessarily in pediatrics, they're also an alternative. And I mean, there are many people who, you know, don't go to a pediatrician or a doctor. They'll go to a osteopath or a chiropractor or an acupuncturist, or, you know, and they have you know, they have the medical oversight, but just from a different practice. And so, you know, they cannot write a medical exemption for you to get into, for children to get into school, but they give, you know, there are alternative types of care that don't require, you know, an MD or that.
And
But
the
again-
challenge with that, though, is that if you're on Medi-Cal, try to
Yes.
find somebody to cover those
Yeah.
things.
And
It's a
yeah,
challenge for
it
the
is.
family. So there's so much work that needs to be done, and, you know, we're just at the tip of the iceberg with this, and now we have a new law that's on the
Yeah,
books.
SB 18.
Another nightmare, and please, let's talk about that briefly too, before we
So-
have a bill. So that's,
So SB 18, it was introduced 2 weeks ago now, I think, by the same senator that introduced SB 277. And SB 218 is it's wretched, but on the surface of it looks like a very benign and something that all of us would want. It's called the Children's Bill of Rights, and it basically has 7 components to it. And it says, you know, a child has the right to good parents, a child has the right to quality education, socio-emotional stability, appropriate health care. And so, you know, they're all things that as a parent, you want all of those things for your child. The key with this bill is that basically it says that if passed, the legislature over the next 6 years has the intent to come up with policy and funding to basically make those things happen. And what that means is basically the government will come up with what is in the best interest of a child for those 7 things. So the government may decide that going to church every day is not in the best interest of the child, so they could take your child away. That smoking in your house is not in the best interest of the child, and so they'll take your child away. That homeschooling is not in the best interest of the child. That if you choose to go to a chiropractor instead of a regular doctor, it is not in the best interest of the child. And all of those things, you know, it doesn't, right now it doesn't say any of that. So it's a very benign bill with no teeth in it. It's the ramifications of this bill passing that are awful, because it basically takes away the parental rights and the parental choice. And, you know, the Supreme Court has upheld that the parent is the one that raises the child and sees what's best for the child. And, you know, every child and every parent and every family is a different situation. What I find is in the best interest of my children and my relationship with my children certainly will not be what you have with your child, or you have with your child, or you have with everybody. Even if we're 99% the same, there is a nuance that is different for me and you. And only us as parents know what's best for our child. And, you know, there's fear-mongering coming out of this, saying, well, you know, the mother who was on meth and killed her child. We have laws in place. We have over 300 laws in place in this state that cover those extreme cases. We have, you know, laws for sexual or physical abuse. We have laws for truancy. We have laws for if you own a gun and you have a child in the house, it has to be locked up. We have laws for those extreme, that small amount of extreme cases, that we don't need this law. We don't need this. And if we do have this law, because I think we can all agree that, yes, we want our children to have a good quality education, to be emotionally stable, to have health care. But the parents have to be involved in that decision making, and it can't be the state that says this is what's in the best interest of every child.
And let me also add, as one who's provided care to young people who were wards of the state of California, they're horrible parents. They do a disgusting job. My assistant vet is nodding her head. These young women were not cared for. Their needs were not met. You know, getting to the personal of it, they're abused, they're over-medicated, they are abandoned, and the state is in charge of them. The state is technically their parent. So I really don't want this body making decisions for anyone's children, what's safe for them or appropriate for them, or enriching and affirming.
And I will say, I do believe it's another bill that gets at the black and brown babies.
Absolutely.
Because income, you know, our position on it is, if you look at what changes a child's life, what gets them a better outcome in the end, there are 2 things, and research that's been done on this. The first and foremost is the income level of the parents.
Exactly.
And our children, 22% of the children in California live in poverty. That means they don't have enough, that means their parents are making less than $11,000 a year. They don't have enough money to feed them, they don't have enough money to clothe them, they don't have enough money for anything, basically. And 22%, that's a quarter of all of our children in this state live at that level. If that's all the state needs to do, is get those parents out of poverty. Give them money so that they can, and that would have an impact immediately on those children and the life they have. The other statistic that needs to change is that our children, we're 42nd in the country in per pupil spending towards schools. And education is the other thing that will increase. You can't have a good education if you don't have the money behind it. There are no teachers in this state that are staying in public schools because the pay is so miserable. I mean, it's just atrocious. And so if you can't keep the teachers in those schools teaching well and teaching our kids don't have a chance of a good education and a good life ahead of them. So, you know, from our perspective, you don't need a children's bill of rights. You need those 2 things fixed. If you need money put towards those 2 things, then you'll have answered the problem. So.
Okay, so I have a question. So about the vaccine. Please see, Bernie. I always do this.
Take a deep breath.
Okay, so the law passing that you have to have the vaccines done before, like, right when they're born, things like that?
For daycare or school?
They're checkpoints, basically.
There are checkpoints,
Okay.
so basically, if you want your child to go into daycare,
Mhm.
you have to have them up to whatever month they are of the recommended schedule. Or the first real checkpoint, if you don't do daycare, the first real checkpoint is kindergarten. And at that point, you have to have had, I think it's, there's 26 doses of like 15 shots. The key there is that you can get a medical exemption. So the way that it's written is that based on family history, and you need, not every doctor will give it to you because, as I said, they're being paid or they're going to lose money if they don't, if they give medical exemptions. They'll get discredited, yeah, that too. But the medical exemption is written that if you have a family history, that's included. So your child doesn't actually have to be vaccinated in order to get a medical exemption. So it used to be, well, not it used to be. If you look at what the contraindications, so the reasons for not getting a vaccine, according to the CDC, you have to have had a vaccine reaction. So you have to have had a serious reaction in order to not get vaccinated again. The medical exemption, it includes family history. So there are doctors, the doctors that we're talking about, but there are a select number of doctors that don't take insurance, but that basically look at your child holistically and look at what is the risk of your child having an adverse reaction to the disease, getting the disease. So let's take measles. Last year, there were 146 cases of measles in California. 40 million people, so that's already a tiny 146 out of 40 million. Tiny, tiny number got it. And of those, no one had an adverse reaction, a serious adverse reaction, or died from it. So infinitesimal likelihood of your child getting the measles and having a severe adverse reaction. And part of that is because the sanitation, the nutrition, the Western medical care, all of that, we have that here. If you were sitting in Africa, in the drought, bad sanitation, you may have a different risk to benefit ratio. But sitting here in California, even in the worst of California, you've got clean water, you've got sanitation, you've got good food, you've got Western medical care. Versus on the other side, getting the vaccination. So once you put the vaccine into your body, that's 100%. And what is the risk of the adverse reactions? And even if you look at the package insert, the risk of the adverse reactions, they say, well, swelling at the site is benign, and having a fever isn't serious. But you go to the next level of seriousness, which includes things like seizures. It's still at about 1%, 1 to 3%. That 1 to 3% is thousands times more than the likelihood of you getting measles and having a similar adverse reaction. And so those doctors do that risk to benefit ratio for your child, and will look at what is the risk, and they look at family history and of autoimmune disorders, which is another area it's not researched here, but in Israel it's being researched a lot, that the vaccine adjuvants trigger autoimmune disorders and things like that. I mean, the big thing is, vaccines are basically Russian roulette. You don't know. You may not have a reaction on the first one. You may not have a reaction on the 10th one. It may be the 11th one that pushes you over the side, or it may be the first one that pushes you. I mean, you saw in the movie, there were some parents, the first one they had, the child had seizures right after. Some of them, it was the 4th, 5th, 6th one. The one thing with most people, or with all people that have a vaccine reaction, is those parents wanted to vaccinate their children. They were pro-vaccine until something happened to their child, and they went, whoa, that's not right.
So what's some? Can you raise your hand?
Yeah. Thanks for being here. I always find amazing how conflicted people's arguments are about this. They get so hysterical in saying, oh, the people who aren't getting vaccines are causing these outbreaks. And then I'm like, but if your kid is vaccinated, they shouldn't be getting sick from the kid who's not vaccinated. The cognitive dissonance is alarming. I just had to say that, but my question is, for all the thousands of hours of research you did, and I think Dr. Sears put it well, most people do look up information on the CDC. So what is the best place to go? Because I've looked on the internet, and I work with Samsara, so I have some resources, but it's really hard to find good information that isn't
It's harder.
a badly written, yeah, like a badly
Exactly.
written corner of the internet, and that's not something I feel confident giving my clients. So like where,
Actually, the CDC, if you dig like 2 levels down, they have a lot of information that goes against what they. You just have to spend time looking for it.
yeah.
The best book that I have a copy of it in my car if anyone wants to get it. But the best book that I recommend for people to read, that if they have no information and they want to read one thing, is Dissolving Illusions by Suzanne Humphreys, and it is extremely well documented.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. But she goes through the history of disease, specifically polio and smallpox, because that's the one that comes back, and everybody's like, well, I remember polio and those iron lung machines, and we don't want to go back to that day and age.
Yeah.
And she goes through and describes that polio wasn't what polio has been made out to be in history now. But she goes through she goes through a very detailed history of vaccination. And so that's the one book that I would, if somebody does nothing else, it's that. Also, you should take, I'm happy to give, and you can take as many as you want. There's a pamphlet that we have called the Vaccine Mandates from Present, Past, or Future. And in there it goes through 7 things that, and they're all documented, but there are 7 things that when you start doing your research of what we say do your research on or look into, and there are 7 things that hook people, and what hooks people is different, but I find that out of the 7 things, one of the things always hooks people. One of them is as you said, the growing vaccine schedule. So right now, a child by the age of 18 will get 72 doses of vaccines. When most of us, I don't know how old you are, but all of you are adults, it was more like 7 to 15. When I was a kid, it was more like, it was 7, and it grew slowly.
Look how healthy you are.